She's taking a picture.
Hello. Hello, I'm Charlie. My presentation is on the occupation of Tibet by China. So you probably all heard of China or Tibet, just this mystical place out in the mountains somewhere. But you might not be able to find it on a map anywhere. It doesn't really. I always thought it was around here, but I don't see it. So zoom in a little bit. I mean, I'm not seeing any Tibet anywhere. So this is where Tibet is. But you don't really see that because China is currently occupying Tibet against its will. And you might wonder how, something like that would even happen. So in 1950, the newly communist China just decided that we're taking this, and so they did. In 1959, the Tibetans weren't too happy about that, and they had an uprising, the Tibetan uprising. And that forced the Dalai Lama to flee into India, where he lives now. In 1965, they instated the CTA, Central Tibetan Administration, and the Tibet Autonomous Region, which is really misleading because Tibet to China is classified as a region of China that has its own authority, but there is no Tibetan authority here because all the officials are Chinese, appointed by Chinese leaders, with only Chinese influence in mind. So there's no autonomy here in this autonomous region. And so you would think that this is a lot of people here, so they'd probably do something about it, but they all live in fear, and the biggest fear that everyone has is kidnappings. People are kidnapped regularly for any number of reasons in China. The most chilling quote is from this guy, Tenzin Namgyal, who said, "They said however many people like me they killed, nobody would ever find out." A lot of statistics on this are unknown because of the nature of it. When people are kidnapped, they're not taken to the county jail, they're just taken and they're gone. You can be kidnapped for any number of reasons. You can be kidnapped for speaking about the kidnappings. There's monitors everywhere. They have cameras and microphones most places in Tibet. You can be kidnapped for saying the phrase human rights. You can be kidnapped for owning pictures of the Dalai Lama. And then when you are kidnapped, you're most likely going to be tortured. This guy, Shonu Palden, is kind of the figurehead for this because most people that they torture, they kill afterwards, so you don't hear about it. But this guy was tortured, and his wounds were severe enough that they had to go get him treated at a hospital. And when he died at that hospital, a lot of this information came to light from his wounds. And they also do a lot of religious manipulation. This 6-year-old was appointed to be the Panchen Lama, who's kind of a second high figure to the Dalai Lama. He was appointed when he was 6, and the day after he was appointed, him and his family were kidnapped and taken. This was in 1995 and haven't been heard from since. China appointed this guy, who is supposed to be the Panchen Lama. They appointed him to be the Panchen Lama, but he's referred to as the Panchen Zuma, like a false Panchen. And he's not really respected in Tibetan Buddhism at all. The Dalai Lama is described by the Chinese ambassador as a political exile who uses the cloak of religion to engage in anti-China separatist activities, which is like calling the Pope a terrorist. He's a religious leader. He's won the Nobel Prize multiple times. He's not a political exile who uses religion to engage in separatist activities. And you can see using this quote that there's definitely something up around here. And unfortunately, there's this huge problem and there's not much we can do about it. But there are some things you can do about it. The biggest thing is avoiding misinformation because the Chinese government will not have you know any of this. Spread what I've told you to anyone else. There's a wonderful site called freetibet.org, and they have things you can, because I don't know the numbers of the Chinese officials to call up and say, hey, release this person, but they have extensive lists of all these people that you can help free. The Panchen Lama hasn't been heard from in 22 years. It'd probably be good to know where he is. The Dalai Lama is actually protesting in his own way. he says that when he dies, there will not be another Dalai Lama because he doesn't want China to appoint another Dalai Lama. So he is saying after this, there is no Dalai Lama. And so if you hear about a new Dalai Lama, it's not legitimate. That's from the Chinese government, and you can't recognize that. It's also important, this is Tibet. It is a country. It has a flag. It has a people. This is not Tibet. This is not Tibet. This is Tibet, and it is up to us as free people to help those who can't help themselves. Thank you for your time. This is where I got all my information. Thanks.
Thank you.
This audience is still here. They didn't go to sleep. Okay, good.